Good morning. Thank you very much, David. David mentioned I'm going to be talking mostly about Central America and specifically Guatemala and El Salvador as case studies. So we'll start here. Okay. The current status. Over the past years, the field of language teaching and learning has experienced fast-coming changes as a result of increase in the demand to use the language for work and academic purposes. Related fields have been affected as a result in the cases of Guatemala and El Salvador. In Guatemala, there is a tremendous growing demand, like in many parts of the world, especially in developing countries, for bilingual personnel in general. As teachers, anybody in the field where he is that is bilingual has an added value to the market. And there's, of course, not enough to fulfill the necessities, as usual. And so there is a tremendous also demand for better teachers and more, let's say, we're having teachers that are being better prepared in the workforce as well, not only by their own institutions, but also through a lot of scholarships that come to us from different parts of the world. In Guatemala, the organization is still a bit weak, but for example, in El Salvador, there is an association of English teachers, plus the fact that the Ministry of Education, though let's say not very strong yet, has made a specific sector within their ministerial purposes for the English language purposes, development. So in that sense, also they have instituted English in public schools. In Guatemala, it's different because since there is a tremendous amount, let's say 60 to 70% of indigenous population, you will have a growing necessity to move from the native tongue to Spanish and then to English. And that is how the curriculum at school requires it. And when we talk, as I was mentioning, ELT and public education, English language education is not a component of the elementary level school curriculum in our country. There are many countries in Latin America that actually do have it. Costa Rica, in that sense, is tremendously developed. They have had it for many years. And also, believe it or not, in Honduras, there is a tremendous level of English amongst youngsters and professionals in general. I had the opportunity to visit and do some work with the technological area of the Ministry of Education a couple of years ago, and I was impressed to see how public servers in Honduras had just excellent English and could communicate very well and make presentations and everything with no accent whatsoever. I mean, really fluent English. Of course, they had many years the United Fruit, and also they have the military base in San Pedro. As I mentioned before, government funding for English language education has been limited and focused at the present time, for example, in Guatemala, very much on teacher development. There is unprecedented situations going on, like for example, the Ministry of Education putting seed money specifically into the preparation of teachers in order to take them to specific areas where there is more touristic development in order for them to teach children since they're very young, and this way, let's say, give them a perspective of a better future. Existing efforts in public schools have been greatly prompted through joint efforts that are mostly a result of private organizations, for example, like IGA, the company that I represent, which is a binational center in Guatemala. We have 7 branches, and we do work with public schools in order to help not only with the children, giving them and administering the English programs, but also in teacher development courses. Now, when we move to English in the job market, there's more and more demand in the areas of business and finance. There's a lot of corporate preparation going on because the fact that we have several multinational companies in Guatemala requires that their labor force be bilingual. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, we are not able to supply the amount of people required for the necessity there is in the economic development camp. Then, of course, we are a country that has a tremendous amount of exportation, especially now that commodities are so hot in the market. We're good at that. We have we have great coffee, cardamom, a whole sugar. We're the second or third we have the second or third place in production in the world. And of course, you can imagine that for the Association of Exportation in Guatemala, having fluent people is extremely important. So they're really putting emphasis on this, and they're trying to get all the private and public organizations to come together in order to be able to have a labor force that is adapting to an ever-demanding market for bilingual personnel. We also have a tremendous demand in tourism, and now an ever-growing market in medicine tourism. Tourism through medicine. It's not only plastic surgery, it's a lot of dentistry, and there are many areas of this market. For example, also there is a tremendous demand for nurses in the United States, and more they are preparing young nurses in Guatemala to become bilingual in order to fulfill the necessity of an ever-growing market in the United States that is not able to be supplied by local people, which is an advantage because they get their legal papers done properly and rapidly. There's also the teaching-related areas in school and language academies, like we are, where we already have an SIT certification. There's only 2 places in Central America and Mexico, I would say that includes Panama, that are certified, and that's IGA, and also a place in Costa Rica where you can get an SIT certification. And then, obviously, the contact centers become a very important aspect of the life of teachers. Why? Because teachers finish their working schedule in mid-afternoon, and many times these jobs, as we all know, are not well paid, and they can go then after that to work in a contact center for 4 more hours. They get a very good salary because they're above a market level, and also different types of compensations that otherwise they would not have in their regular jobs. And of course, then we have clerical jobs and vocational jobs that are in demand as well because of the different growing fields in the area. Factors affecting ELT and academics. We have an increase of study exchanges with countries other than the U.S. It is incredible how, it's because of that, due to the economic situation of the world in general, many students that before would definitely go and try to get into a university in the United States are now looking towards South America. They go a lot to Argentina, Chile, Brazil, especially in the areas of engineering and medicine in Brazil. So obviously English is not in growing demand for them to move to these countries. But economically it becomes much better. On the other hand, we have a tremendous availability of scholarships that are given through government entities and private entities and the embassies themselves for teachers to get postgraduate degrees in Asia and in the Middle East. I was, in our board meeting, I was commenting yesterday with some of my colleagues that last week we have a school with 750 students at the IGA. It's a high school, and now we have implemented middle school. They were interviewing some of our students in order to go to NYU for a full scholarship in Abu Dhabi, which is something that is not what we usually hear. Then we have also a greater degree of English-speaking teaching staff exchange. For example, in IGA we have 287 teachers. Not all of them are bilingual. I would say that 80% of them are bilingual. And through different programs that we have created and with the support of the U.S. government, we have a continuous exchange of our teachers within Central America, South America, and also a lot in the U.S. in order for them to have exchange opportunities and, as we mentioned before, talk about best practices in their different fields. And there's also a tremendous surge of scholarship opportunities for graduate levels, especially the government of Taiwan is constantly giving out scholarships in Guatemala in all the professions. And obviously, you need to speak English fluently. That's the #1 requirement. When we talk about results in ELT, a greater demand for programs which work academic writing and reading. I'm mentioning this because most of the programs are done in a fast track, and usually writing and reading is not a primary component. But due to the importance and the ever-growing demand for international testing in order to be able to go into these scholarships and other work-related areas, this is becoming more and more in demand, that teachers give the students better skills in writing and reading. We also have a tremendous increase as a result of this in standardized test-taking training in our facilities. We have a demand for English language instruction in combination with other academic areas as a result. And this creates a greater awareness of the importance of cross-cultural instruction in combination with language training. This is something that we hear a lot about experiences. For example, when we're hearing, I remember in the past, in some of the plenary sessions at TISO, that you would hear the experiences of teachers in specific areas in the United States where they would find the necessity of getting culturally involved with their students in order to better communicate. Now, as we conclude and talk about what we would see as predictions for the future, we do have a tremendous dependence on private organizations supporting public English education. This is something that is definitely growing and growing. Unfortunately, we do not have enough teachers to supply the demand. But it is through, mostly at the present time in Guatemala and the rest of Central America, that we see this field growing in necessity and also in demand, and a lot of the teachers are getting more and more involved with private organizations in order to be able to disseminate and little by little, let's say, attack this tremendous problem that for us is a matter of development or underdevelopment. We have also an increased demand of on-site corporate English programs. This is really great for us, let's say in my field as a business, because our teachers during the day, for example, don't have as much a demand of the classes. We have a very tight scheduled, let's say, from 7 to 9, and then again from 5 to 8. But in the meantime, the teachers are basically available, and so we have now a very large corporate program for the workforce. Companies in general are very much interested in investing and having their executives receive classes at the work site in order for them to be sure that they will attend the program and at the same time facilitate the possibility of the program of learning English for the employee in general. There is also great competition for English-speaking personnel, which affects definitely wages and benefits, as I mentioned before. We have a market search for online English learning activities. We also, as a company, represent several of the best editorials in the world, and there is a tremendous demand for online learning, blended learning as we call it, and I think it's going to be growing more and more each day, especially now that so many teachers are involved in this process. This obviously develops the possibility of greater opportunities for test preparation and cultural awareness programs, which are so necessary. We'll have an increase in English proficiency certifications. When we started opening our SIT program to the public, we had a few students. We actually, in our workforce, we grant our employees the possibility of getting their SIT certification. But now it's incredible. You would not believe that we have students from all over the world coming to Guatemala to get their SIT certification. Right now we have people from Brazil, we have had people from India. Last year we had a couple of lawyers from Georgetown coming because they see it as an opportunity of adventure in combination with a learning process, and we're very, very proud of that. There's also a rise in the student segments in searching for writing and reading preparation. As I said, the demand in more skills in general in both components, not only the spoken but also the reading and writing process, is something that is obtaining major importance at the present time because of the skills that are demanded in the workforce. So I think it's a great fact that TIRF is emphasizing tremendously on what it means for the workforce to have people that are skillful in the language. As a person who comes from a country who is in the process of development, I definitely understand the importance of having more teachers prepared in order to have young speakers growing in number in our countries. Thank you very much.